there's officially now been 3 weeks of baseball that has been played, so we have a little bit more clarity on how some teams are looking, how some players have looked so far. So now, on this episode of the Ballhawk Sports Podcast, we're going to take a look back at the last week and take a look forward at what is to come in the next week. Starting us off where we always do, we're going to do the injury wrap up. Now let's start with Matt Wallner, the outfielder for the Twins. He was put on the 10-day injury list with a left hamstring injury. The severity is unclear, so the timeline is unclear on this one. Starting pitcher for the Yankees, Luis Gil, he had the beginning of his throwing program pushed back about 10 days due to more healing needed after recent MRIs showed that his lat was still bothering him. Yuri Perez, young superstar starting pitcher for the Marlins. He faced hitters on Tuesday, throwing about 45 pitches. They said that he's about a month away from a rehab assignment, which would line him up to return mid-June from his Tommy John surgery last April. Chris Bryant, outfielder DH for the Rockies, he was put on the 10-day IL. He was diagnosed with a degenerative disc issue in his back. He was put on the IL. He's expected to just take the minimum days to get rest, and he will need to deal with the pain and manage it throughout the season and potentially into future seasons. A degenerative disc issue is not something that immediate surgery can heal. But moving on to Mason Wynn, shortstop for the Cardinals. He's on track to return when first eligible on Tuesday from his back issue. So that's good news for Cardinals fans. Starting pitcher for the Blue Jays, Max Scherzer. He's still having issues with his thumb. He went back to the doctor yesterday after consecutive days of throwing, which was the first time since he went on the IL with that thumb issue that pulled him out of his first start of the season. So we still don't know when he's going to return, and a lot of that will depend on what the doctor had to say when he went to the meeting yesterday. But Jose Siri, center fielder for the Mets, he is on the 10-day IL with a broken left tibia. They said he's probably 3 weeks away minimum from resuming baseball activities, and he is unable to put a lot of weight on his leg as of right now. Now, good news for Angels fans. Their shortstop, Zach Neto, he's on track to return from the IL this weekend, possibly as soon as today. So he's been turning it up down there at AAA. So really, really good news for Angels fans, as they're also having a good start to the season, which we'll get into later. Ronald Acuna Jr., right fielder for the Atlanta Braves, he was given the green light to ramp up baseball activities and progress towards rehab assignment in his recovery from torn ACL, so good news there. Tyler Wells, starting pitcher for the Orioles, will begin throwing bullpens within the next 2 weeks. He is in Tommy John recovery, so his return timetable probably lines up with about the All-Star break if he does start throwing his bullpens in that time period. Catcher for the Pirates, Endy Rodriguez, he was put on the 10-day IL with a lacerated finger. He needed stitches to close the wound after he was injured on a foul tip behind the plate. His return timetable is unclear. It'll really be about whether the finger reacts well, how long stitches need to be in, how long it takes for the wound to close, and for how much pain tolerance he can handle back there behind home plate. Now, Royce Lewis, third baseman for the Twins, he started taking on-field batting practice and fielding ground balls on Monday. They don't know when to begin rehab assignment for him, but they are targeting an early May return to the majors. Richard Fitz, starting pitcher for the Red Sox, he is on the 15-day IL with a pec strain, and they currently do not have a timetable for his return, as he is still undergoing testing. Jake Cronenworth, second baseman, first baseman for the Padres, he will miss a minimum of a month with a fractured rib that he suffered after getting hit by a pitch in this last week. Lance McCullers, starting pitcher for the Astros, it was announced that he is targeting the series versus the Royals from the 25th to 27th of this month for his return. So good news there, as he hasn't thrown a game in over 2 years. Bad news for Cubs fans. Starting pitcher Justin Steele, he got a second opinion on his elbow that we talked about last week, and he is out for the season with an elbow injury needing Tommy John surgery. Now, next we're going to get into the rehab track. Starting us off with two Red Sox pitchers, we have Lucas Giolito. He went 2 innings, gave up 5 hits, 3 walks, 3 earned runs, and 4 Ks at AA on Tuesday. Brian Bayo, also for the Red Sox, went 4 1/3, 6 hits, 1 walk, 4 earned runs, and 7 K at AA on Wednesday. Jeff McNeil, second baseman, outfielder for the Mets. It was announced that he, on his rehab trail, will be playing some center field, where he's at single A right now. They're expected to elevate him to possibly double or triple A over the weekend. But he is getting center field reps on his assignment, so look for him to possibly be used there as well as at second base once he returns, with Siri being out for the Mets. Starting pitcher for the LA Dodgers, Tony Gonsolin, went 4 innings, gave up 6 hits, 3 earned runs on 1 walk, got 5 Ks with their AAA squad on Tuesday. Relief pitcher for the Mariners, Matt Brash. He's beginning a rehab assignment on Sunday with the AAA team. That's very good news for them. That is a talented young relief pitcher right there. Starting pitcher for the Brewers, Tobias Myers. He's making his 3rd and final rehab start tomorrow at AAA, and then he will return to a very injured Brewers rotation afterwards. Ranger Suarez, starting pitcher for the Phillies, went 4 innings, gave up 3 hits, 1 walk, 1 earned run, 7 Ks at single A yesterday. That's his second start down there, so he probably is at least a week or 2 away from returning to the big league squad for that. They have not said whether they will go with a 5-man rotation when he returns, so that remains to be seen. Brandon Woodruff, starting pitcher for the Brewers, he went 3 2/3, gave up 4 hits, 2 walks, 2 earned runs, and 5 Ks at AAA on Saturday. He is also expected to need another 2 starts maybe. The injuries for the Brewers starting pitchers might prolong or might expedite that process, but we will see what happens there. Javier Assad, starting pitcher for the Cubs, he went 3 1/3, gave 4 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 4 Ks at AAA yesterday. A potential fill-in if Colin Ria or Ben Brown start to falter now that Justin Steele is out in that rotation. And last one, we have Clayton Kershaw, starting pitcher for the Dodgers. He went 3 innings, 2 hits, no earned runs, no walks, 2 Ks yesterday at AAA. Big news for him. He is expected to take the full 30 days that he's allotted on rehab assignment to get his full spring training buildup and return mid to late May for the Dodgers. Now moving on to our team of the week. We're going to start in left field, where we have Griffin Conan, the rookie left fielder for the Miami Marlins. He is just a hitting machine so far this season, and last week he didn't hit a homer, but he had 4 RBIs, scored 7 runs, batted .467, .529, .733 slug. It's a really good week for him, and nice for the Marlins to see, as they could use as much hitting as they can get. Moving on to center field, Jung-Hoo Lee, San Francisco Giants. He is having a phenomenal start to the season, which is really good for the Giants. After he got hurt last year, there were starting to be some questions of whether he was worth that contract, so really nice to see him returning and playing well. He had 3 homers, 10 RBIs, and 8 runs, and he slashed .348, .429, .870, so just really good week for him, solid all around. And he did single-handedly beat the Yankees over the weekend, hitting 2 home runs against Carlos Rodon and scoring all 4 runs for them. Moving on to Aaron Judge, the right fielder for the New York Yankees. He did not have the most powerful week of his career, but he did continue to swing a very hot bat as he hit .556 with a .680 on base and an .833 slug. He had 1 homer, 8 RBIs, 4 runs scored. So a good week for him, despite not showing that normal power we expect from him. But moving on to the infield, third baseman Austin Riley of the Braves. He had a .414 average, a .433 on base, and a .769 slug. He hit 3 homers, 7 RBIs, and 6 runs, trying to single-handedly pull that team out of the Dragons there. But at shortstop, we have Bobby Witt Jr., Kansas City Royals. He batted .414, .446 on base, .625 slug with 1 homer, 3 RBIs, 4 runs scored, and 2 stolen bases. Good, solid week for him, amongst a not-so-good week for shortstops overall. Moving on to second base, we have another breakout star over here in Gabriel Arias for the Cleveland Guardians, former fringe top 100 prospect. He batted .471 with a .526 on base and a 1.0 slug with 3 homers, 6 RBIs, 5 runs scored, really solidifying himself as a starting second baseman over there in Cleveland. Now moving on to first base, we have one of the hottest hitters to start this year. It's Pete Alonso for the New York Mets. He batted .429 with a .519 on base and an .860 or .857 slug 2 homers, 6 RBIs, 5 runs scored. He's really benefiting from batting behind Juan Soto, which I'm sure he appreciates, despite the fact that Soto might not like that he is getting pitched around. But at DH, we have Matt Mervis of the Miami Marlins. He batted 273, so not the best average that we've seen out here, but he did have a 385 on base, and his slug was 1.091, so absolutely powerful week for him. 3 homers, 6 RBIs, 3 runs scored. So good on him helping out with Conan, bringing that Marlins offense up. At catcher, we had Cal Raleigh of the Seattle Mariners. He batted 300 with the 364 on base and a 1.1 slug. Now, this was all helped by the fact that he hit 5 home runs with 7 RBIs and 7 runs scored in this last week. So good for him having a great week. And on the pitching side of things, we have Nick Pivetta for the Padres. He went 2-0, 13 innings, 16 Ks. He had a 0.69 ERA and a 0.69 whip in 2 starts out there in San Diego, really making every other team regret the fact that they passed him up in free agency. And finishing us off with the relief pitcher of the week, we have Jared Koenig. He is a lefty reliever for the Brewers, setup man. He did not have a win or a loss, but he did go 4 1/3 innings with 6 Ks, 3 holds. He had no earned runs, so he had a 0 ERA and a 0.23 whip. He gave up 1 hit all week in those 4.1 innings and no walks. So an absolutely dominant showing from that Brewers lefty. Now, I want to move on to my MLB Power Rankings. Now, we're going to start at team number 30, the Chicago White Sox. Now, they are a very young team. I don't expect them or the team at 29 here to crawl very high up in this list, but they have had some good signs. Chase Meadroff came up from the minors after not winning a job out of training camp and has shown some good bat to ball skills. Shane Smith in the starting rotation has shown some skills out there. Sean Burke had a really good opening day start. He has not followed that up with some very good showings, but other than that, their bullpen is sketchy. They've been giving up a lot of runs. The one person that you would expect them to have do well, Luis Robert Jr., not having the best year, although he is running rampant with, I believe, 6 or 7 steals already this season. But you question, because that's their big piece, that if he were to be popping off, they'd get a big return for him. But right now it's looking like they'll get a middling to nothing kind of return for him at the trade deadline. But moving on to our number 29 team, the Colorado Rockies. Now, the thing about the Rockies is they're not hitting the way that their talent in the lineup shows. Brenton Doyle was really the only guy that was hitting for them, and he went down with an injury last week, or I think it was a week and a half ago. So, hopefully guys like Michael Toglia at first base, Adele Amar, one of their utility players, former top prospect, Zach Veen out in the outfield, Ezekiel Tovar, who's been playing okay, but not to the level that he can. Ryan McMahon's just kind of doing his thing. Hunter Goodwin was having a good start to the year, but he had a decently bad week. So that lineup has talent. It's just got to put it together. It's a very young lineup, so we'll see what happens there. And then their pitching just continues to have issues. Kyle Freeland just can't get any swing and misses. Herman Marquez looking pretty decent coming off of being injured most of last season. But still, his swing and miss stuff really isn't there either. The one good thing you can say about their pitching staff is their bullpen's been okay. It's had some big blowups, like some really big showings of like not being good. But they have also shown they've kept their team in a lot of games when their starting pitchers have just blown up. But the last point I want to get across before moving on to our 28th team is Chase Doolander, I believe, is the most legit pitcher that they have had since like Ubaldo Jimenez, like going back all the way to like the early like 2010s to like 2008, 2007. Like that's how far back that this like just horrible pitching has been, but Chase Dolander is a legit prospect with swing and miss stuff, which is what you need when you play your home games in Colorado. So look out for him to continue to try to hold the entire weight of a pitching staff on his shoulders as a rookie. He's had a great first 2 starts since being called up. But our number 28 team is the Pittsburgh Pirates. Outside of Paul Skeens and the flashes of O'Neal Cruz, there's not much to like about this team. They have a little bit more all-around talent. Their bullpen has been absolutely horrible. Their former all-star closer, David Bednar, got optioned to the minors. So, it's just not a lot of good things happening over there, especially after Jared Jones went down and Bubba Chandler was unable to win a spot in the rotation. So we'll see what happens there. They're a decently young team. O'Neal Cruz needs to put it all together instead of just being a huge hit or miss type player. But we'll see what happens. Moving on to number 27, a team that I did not expect to be here, the Atlanta Braves, 5-13 record. Now, I will say the caveat is, of the 18 games they've played, 13 have been with teams against teams who have a current over 500 record. So they have had a little bit of a gauntlet coming out, but their offense is just lackluster, similar to last year, not what we saw 2 years ago when they were a juggernaut. I do believe that Ronald Acuna Jr. really is the ball that keeps everything rolling out there in Atlanta. So getting him back in about a month or so will be a huge boost for them. But they can't play this type of bad baseball for the whole season. And, Lopez went down. Chris Sale is looking ineffective. They did just get back Spencer Strider yesterday, which is a huge help. He looked pretty good and should continue to look better as he gets more comfortable returning from the internal brace surgery. And Spencer Schwellenbach has been a good sign for them on the mound. So, we'll see what happens, but this team's got to turn things around quickly. Another team that's a little disappointing coming out of the spring training season is our number 26 team, the Baltimore Orioles. They have a 7-10 record. Now, the thing about the Orioles is their lineup can be just really good. They have a lot of talent, behind those bats. Gunnar Henderson coming back. He hasn't really found his swing yet, coming back off that injury. Him not having the full spring training to ramp up because it got split when he got hurt really isn't helping him. And I would expect that, it's going to take him like another week or 2 or 3 weeks to actually get into a groove and be the player that we know that he can be. And then their pitching is just not good. It's just not where it needs to be. So, they need to make a move fast, which their GM did come out and say that there's been a lot more trade chatter than you normally hear in April. So maybe they can make a move and get a pitcher. But, Saguna and Morton were never going to be enough to replace Burns and all the injuries that they've had. Kyle Bradish is down. Tyler Wells is down. Grayson Rodriguez is also down. So it's just a lot of talent they've lost to either injury or free agency. But the reinforcements they get when Grayson Rodriguez comes back, when Kyle Gibson is fully built up and able to make starts for them, should be able to help. But I don't know if relying on Charlie Morton and Saguna, the guy from Japan, was the best decision by this organization. Now, moving on to our number 25 teams, the Minnesota Twins. They are 7-12 record. Their offense is just very injured. Matt Wallner just went down. Carlos Correa has a couple tweaks. Byron Buxton is a glass ball out there just waiting to break. Royce Lewis, who is another glass ball, has already gone down with a hamstring injury. It's been keeping him out for almost 2 months. So, a lot of their offensive firepower has been sapped. And then their pitching, Pablo Lopez is down with an injury. Baylor Olber's not being as effective as he was last year. It's a problem. It's everything's accumulating in the worst of ways for the Twins. And I would look out for the Twins being sellers at the trade deadline if this trend continues. That is a huge amount of thing. If Royce Lewis and Byron Buxton can be healthy at the deadline and be available, those are huge bats to be available. If Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober are all available in some type of capacity, those are huge trade pieces that were not expected to be available coming into this season. So look out for that. Moving on to our number 24 team, the Washington Nationals, and their 7-11 record. The story for them outside of the first game of the season is really just a lot of bats and not a lot of pitching. Mackenzie Gore has regressed from his brilliant opening day start. As to be expected, you can't go out there and go in 6 innings striking out 13 guys every single game. But his control issues continue to pop up, and then they lack talent in their starting pitching rotation just in general. So we'll see what happens there. Cade Cavalli is coming back from injury. Hopefully we can finally see him don the Nationals blue, but we'll see what happens. But if you haven't seen James Wood play baseball, look him up. I mean, he is a towering lefty hitter. His swing is just butter, and his power is really coming along very well. So I believe he is going to have a fantastic year and really make the Padres regret that Soto deal they made years ago. But moving on to our number 23 team is the Athletics. They are 8-10. Now their pitching is probably like the most surprising to be as bad as it is, but they're also running into some consistency issues with some of their stars from last year, as Lawrence Butler and Brent Rooker are not having the best starts to their season. Tyler Soderstrom, if you haven't heard of him, you should look him up as well. Having an absolute great year to start the season at first base. He was the big piece that came over in the Sean Murphy deal from the Braves. They converted him to first base, and he is killing it. I believe he leads the majors with 8 homers so far this season. So good on them, but they need more out of the pitchers they acquired in Jeffrey Springs and Luis Severino. But it was good to see Osvaldo Bido had a nice start yesterday. So, we'll see what happens there, but I expect them to be about 500 all season. So not the most surprising that they are here. But our number 22 team, the Miami Marlins, a little surprising at 8-9 record. As we went over in the Team of the Week segment, they have had some surprise hitters, and their pitching has been effective enough. I think that they have a better than expected bullpen that is helping them close out games and keep games close, and help when their starting rotation doesn't go deep, although their starters have shown surprising effectiveness despite everyone being out and Sandy Alcantara not having the greatest start to the season. So we knew coming into the year the Marlins could pitch, so seeing them hit a little bit is going to raise their floor. But I still don't know how high the ceiling is. I mean, Conan is a decent piece in the outfield, but other than that, they don't really have any outfielders. Connor Norby is just starting the rehab trail this week. He should be a nice add to their offense. But really, De Los Santos, their prospect they acquired from the Diamondbacks in the offseason or in the trade deadline last year for AJ Puck, he would be a huge power boost for them coming up from the minors at some point later this season that they would need. And getting Connor Norby back obviously would be a huge help to them. But moving on to our number 21 team, the Kansas City Royals at 8-11. Their offense always wasn't going to be good enough coming into this season. It really wasn't last year, and it was the reason why they got bounced in the playoffs. But the reason that they're standing at this record right now is some ineffectiveness on the pitching staff. Cole Reagans is racking up the strikeouts, but he has been a little bit susceptible to hard contact. So he's had some issues. He's striking out 12 guys a game and then letting up 4 runs. So we want to see him continue to become a complete pitcher. Seth Lugo is having some. It's a mix of like giving up too many hits, giving up too many walks, just leading to too many runs. He never was a big swing and miss guy, but he was sitting at like an 8 to 9 K9. He's just not at that point yet this season, this year. So Chris Bubich is a nice find for them. He was a starter that went under the knife for Tommy John, came back as a reliever last season. Now they're converting him back to a starter, similar to the Garrett Crochet situation with the White Sox last year. Bubic is having a nice start to the season for them. Is going to be a big help, but really they need more hitting. Jonathan India's been okay since coming over, but they needed an outfielder. I thought that they were a better fit for Anthony Santander, but they obviously didn't want to spend like that, so we are where we are. I did want to mention, though, Vinny Pasquantino having a very Vinny Pasquantino start to the season. So he's just a very consistent force behind Witt, but I would like to see him batting 5th or 6th, not batting 3rd. But, you have what you have, so we'll see what happens there. Moving on to our number 20 team, the St. Louis Cardinals, who even coming into this season, I would probably have said just the epitome of average. I think that they have an average offense. They have an average pitching staff. They've gotten some nice outings from Sonny Gray, which is nice to see. Nolan Arenado is playing better than he was last year, which is good. Brendan Donovan has been a force as that utility man for them, playing a lot of left field, second base for them a little bit too. But really, they need their young guys to continue to take steps forward. That's Matthew Liberatore in the starting rotation. Jordan Walker out there in the outfield, Nolan Gorman in the infield, and Mason Wynn to come back healthy and continue to build along the player that he is. And then hopefully the wins will continue to follow. But our number 19 team here is the Tampa Bay Rays with an 8-10 record. Now, I did put them higher because I love their pitching staff. Even without Shane McClanahan, their pitching staff is just dripping with talent. So despite the fact that they have the problem similar to the Royals and the Marlins, where they don't have the hitting to back it up, but they're playing in a ballpark that is more hitter friendly than Tropicana Field, in George M. Steinbrenner Field, which the dimensions match what the Yankees stadium dimensions are. So it has that short porch, which is helping guys tap into a little bit of extra power, and I think overtime will continue to help them, especially as guys like Josh Lau come back from injury. But moving on to number 18, the Houston Astros, an 8-10 record. They are having a weird start to the year where they're when they pitch good, they don't hit. When they hit good, they don't pitch. So it's just kind of not matching up, kind of similar to last year. I expect them to turn it around at some point. I don't know to the degree that they will be able to, as they just continue to lose those key pieces from those championship runs and those deep playoff runs. So I have some questions about leadership in the locker room, and some guys that it came out that Nolan Arenado vetoed the trade to the Astros because of the trade that they made of Tucker, just thinking that the Astros were not going to be as committed to winning as he would like, despite still remaining on the Cardinals. So we'll see what happens. Cam Smith is doing okay out there in right field after unexpectedly winning that job. Isaac Paredes is doing good. Jose Altuve has been a mess defensively in left field, but he's still, hitting very well. And Framber Valdez continuing to, he has some, he's an interesting pitcher because he is a pitch to contact guy. So if you make too much contact and find too many holes, he's going to give up a lot of runs in chunks. But he'll also go, 9 innings on under 100 pitches, and just completely dominate that way. So we'll see what happens. But our number 17 team here is the Los Angeles Angels. They have a 9-8 record, really outperforming what people were expecting from them, which is really good because Mike Trout deserves to be in the playoffs more than he has been in his career. But Mike Trout having a good start to the year power-wise, not average-wise. It's nice to see him continue to stay healthy, playing a nice right field out there. But the big story there in LA right now, I think, is their utility man, Kyron Paris. He's having a really good start to the season as a young 23-year-old with some pop and some speed, splitting time between second base and center field. Splitting time with Adele in center field. So, some nice pieces there. They're pitching good enough. They're hitting good enough. I probably expect them to be, 5-10 games under 500 at the end of the year, but 9-8, good start to the season. Another team having a good start to the season is the Cleveland Guardians, who are also 9-8. Now, I have questions about their offense, and I have questions about their pitching. I don't have questions about their bullpen. Their bullpen is fantastic. It will continue to be so despite some inefficiency issues from Emmanuel Clase that they are not used to. But he got a little exposed in the playoffs, so I don't know if that's playing a role in his psyche, but we'll see what happens there. Like I said, with the team of the week, Gabriel Arias having a nice showing. Another guy, Kyle Manzardo, is having a nice showing so far this year. His average is down a little bit, but his on-base percentage is through the roof. So he's working the count. He's drawing his walks, even though he might not be getting the hits that you would like to see out of your DH first baseman. But moving right along to our number 15 team, the Boston Red Sox, who have a 10-10 record. They've had an interesting season so far. Rafael Devers had an absolutely horrible first week and then, has turned it on since then. Alex Bregman looking like a really big steal of a signing for them. Garrett Crochet, absolutely dominant since coming over from the White Sox in a trade. He took a no-hitter into the 7th or 8th inning against his old team just last week, so really nice to see that. But other than them and Christian Campbell, who had a nice week and a half to start the season and has since came down a little bit, same with Willie Abreu. Their pitching staff just has been getting cranked. It's really not good, which I guess is a good sign with them having some guys coming back, that they're not going to have any really bad decisions. But they didn't expect Sean Newcomb and Richard Fitz to be making starts coming into the season, so maybe when they get their pitchers in Giolito and Bayo back, some of that will start to turn around, but we'll have to wait and see. The one thing we can know is that they will hit well enough to keep themselves in most games. Moving on to number 14, a team that can pitch very well is the Seattle Mariners at 9-9. It's been nice to see their offense not be as stagnant as it was last year. Unfortunately, the George Kirby injury is leading to some ineffectiveness in that spot as his replacement. But Luis Castillo just continuing to show that he's not the pitcher that he once was, as he is now over 30. But Jorge Polanco with some nice showings with the bat. Julio Rodriguez starting off the year a lot better than he has the last 2 years. And then Cal Raleigh just doing Cal Raleigh things, as we went over in the Team of the Week segment. But with Logan Gilbert, Brian Wu, Bryce Miller, they're going to have a good rotation out there. Luis Castillo as well. They're going to have a good rotation. They're going to pitch well. They're going to be in a lot of close 3-2, 2-1 games, and hopefully their offense can pick it up a little bit. They're a team that in the offseason I would have liked to have seen them, bring more in for agency-wise, but we'll see what happens at the trade deadline. But for now, they look like an average offense and an above-average pitching staff, which, that plays. Moving on to the Cincinnati Reds, they are 9-9 as well. They have had a surprisingly effective pitching staff, as Hunter Green looks like one of the best pitchers in baseball right now. Brady Singer is acclimating himself very well to being a Cincinnati Red since coming over in that trade from the Kansas City Royals. And then on offense, they're not as dynamic. Now, part of that is Ellie De La Cruz is not running as much. Matt McClain just missed 10 days with an injury. Their outfield is lacking completeness, I guess is the way to put it. They have a good center fielder in TJ Friedel, but he just gives you a little speed, a little power, and decent on base. But their right field and left field, not great. If Spencer Steer could pick it up a little bit, that would help. They're still looking to find a spot for Noel V. Marte. Jaime Candelario is not playing as well as he did last year. Tyler Stevenson's out with an injury, so their lineup has had some issues, which was not what was expected going into the season. So it's nice to see them still be able to get to 9-9 with some effectiveness in the pitching category. Moving on to number 12, I have the Milwaukee Brewers at a 10-9 record. Now, part of this is that they got demolished in the first 3 games of the season. So they got swept. They started 0-3. They're 10-6 since then, and their starting pitchers just keep dropping like flies. Jackson Chourio, absolute superstar, and he's proven it. He's having a very hot start to the season. Bryce Terang continuing to do just, platinum glove stuff at second base, while also hitting and stealing like nobody's business. Joey Ortiz having a nice sophomore year as well. And then it's nice to see Christian Yelich having a decent start to the year after being hurt at the end of last season. And Sal Frelick absolutely tearing it up. But really their success is built on their bullpen. Abner Uribe, Jared Koenig, McGill out there, they're just beasts. They continue to show it. That's not even talking about like Elvis Pegorio or I'm missing someone else. I apologize, but their bullpen's really good, and it's covering best as they can for their very injured starting rotation. But moving on to number 11, I have the Philadelphia Phillies, who are 10-8. They are showing signs of being very top heavy, which is a problem because their top heavy players are older. So like Nick Castellanos is really just like a league average player, bad glove, good bat, it evens out. Kyle Schwarber, basically their full-time DH now, which limits them a little bit, but he's been on a tear to start the season. Bryce Harper starting the season a little slow. Their pitchers are having some efficiency issues as well, as Aaron Nola's been knocked around, as he has been a little known to do in recent seasons, as he's been losing some velocity and some feel for his pitches as he's gotten older. He's now over 30. Trey Turner having an uninspiring start to the season. JT Realmuto down with an injury. So, they've got some things to figure out, but they'll be in it until they'll get into the playoffs. Their record and their ability to fight through all of this is just proof of that. Moving on to number 10, we have the Detroit Tigers at a 10-8 record. Now, this record is fully built on their phenomenal pitching staff, as they have had Tariq Skubal, Jack Flaherty, Jackson Jobe, Reese Olson, just absolutely tearing teams apart. Really nice to see them continue to pitch well as they hopefully get some of their offense going. And Spencer Torkelson, who won a job on the Major League roster after getting optioned last season in spring training, absolutely tearing it up, helping to carry this offense a little bit. But look for him to continue to show the promise that he had when he was selected number 1 overall, as I definitely think that he has that in him. So, great to see. And then you have Riley Green, who can still get hot, Patrick Meadows, who can come off injury. Any number of their infield prospects could step up and be what they're supposed to be. So, we'll see what happens, but they look like a good team that could just run away with that AL Central division. Moving on to number 9, though, I have the Toronto Blue Jays at 11-8. I have them at 9 because they've played some lopsided baseball. They've lost by a lot of runs to some not good teams, and then they've also beaten some teams by a lot of runs as well. So it's really, I have questions about their bullpen. I have questions about their ability to score consistently, especially if Vladimir Guerrero is not going to be the Vladimir Guerrero that we know that he can be, as he's having a okay start to the season. It has been nice to see Bo Bichette doing Bo Bichette things out there at shortstop, but Anthony Santander getting off to a slow start, although he did have a homer yesterday. Not the best thing for them, but I think one of the most underrated signings of the offseason in Jeff Hoffman has been lights out for the Blue Jays as their closer, really helping to, if they get to him, it's done, it's over. So good on them being the one team willing to dish out that money, the $33 million that he wanted. But we went to number 8. We have the New York Mets. I went back and forth on where I wanted to put the Mets because I think that they're overperforming how they should be playing right now, but they're also playing bad teams as well. They haven't had a challenging schedule, which is being able to help their very hurt pitching staff. As Sean Manaea is down with an injury, Frankie Montas is down with an injury, so they're having to pitch some guys they wouldn't want to pitch. But Kodai Senga looks good. Juan Soto is Juan Soto. He'll be able to turn it up from a slow start that he's been having. He just had 2 homers in a couple games ago. But Pete Alonso, being the polar bear that he is, absolutely killing it. Francisco Lindor having the April slump that he always has. This offense has room to grow, and hopefully when their pitching staff gets healthy, it can continue to push them to that next tier of teams. And coming in at number 7, I have the Chicago Cubs. If you don't count their 2 games in Japan where they didn't really look ready to play baseball, which is not like a horrible thing considering that it was, a week and a half before actual games were supposed to be played. They have a 12-7 record, which is really good. They've been challenged. They just played the Padres and the Dodgers. They have the Padres again coming up this week. So, they've had a really rough schedule, but they've been able to fight through it. Losing Justin Steele does hurt them. That's a top-of-the-line starter you don't want to just not have. But they have a pretty deep starting rotation, and they have so much potential in their lineup. I mean, they have so much that their lineup can do. If Pete Crow Armstrong puts it together, Kyle Tucker has been like the best hitter in baseball, not named Aaron Judge so far this season. So, that trade looks good for them despite the value that the Astros are getting out of their end of the bargain. And Tucker's earning himself a lot of money. But they also have Michael Busch as a good first baseman. They've had a good platoon with Carson Kelly and Miguel Amaya at catcher. And their pitchers outside of Steele have been effective. Shoto Omanga has to step it up and be the ace now. But I think that he's able to do that. And they did just option Matt Shaw, which was not great to see. I was really rooting for him to be, a spark plug at the bottom of the lineup for them. But they'll insert John Birdie or they'll insert Justin Turner, and they won't have any problems. So, a good start despite being absolutely, really, really challenged to start this season. Nice to see them respond with a 12-9 record, taking control of that NL Central early. Moving on to our number 6 team, I have the New York Yankees, who are 11-7. Now, I went back and forth with them and our number 5 team that I'll get into in a second, because you can see their flaws. They don't have the best. They have a hole at third base. They've had some injuries to their pitching staff that have hurt them. They wouldn't want Carlos Carrasco. They didn't want Will Warren to be pitching in the majors. They didn't want Marcus Stroman to be pitching in the majors. So, nice to see them get Clark Schmidt back and get an effective start out of him yesterday. The sweep of the Royals definitely helped them, but they have played some really good teams, as they had the Diamondbacks and the Giants coming to town. So, they've had a little bit of a tough schedule. The National League always plays them tough, but and they've had some problem with top end pitching, which kind of lowers their ceiling in my opinion. But they're also a little bit of a younger team than you would expect from the Yankees. So we'll see. They have a lot of room to grow, especially on the pitching side of things, as guys like Carlos Rodon have been ineffective as well. Moving on to number 5 with the Texas Rangers at an 11-7 record. This is impressive for them, as they've lost Jack Leiter, who had a great first 2 starts, to the IL. They have already lost Cody Bradford to the IL, but Tyler Mahle is looking good out there in Texas. Kumar Rocker's been rocky, excuse the pun. But Jacob deGrom has looked to kind of limit himself in how hard he is throwing the ball to try to elongate, his ability to stay healthy. So hopefully that's able to continue, and he can continue to be effective, as he did get knocked around a little bit in his last start. But a good season. They need Wyatt Langford to come back healthy. They need Adolis Garcia to continue his turnaround, and hopefully some young guys like Josh Jung, Jake Berger to step it up a little bit, and completely turn this offense around. As I think this offense has some of the best potential in the majors this season. They just gotta put it all together. So good for them being able to get an 11-7 record while not playing their best baseball. Speaking of a team not playing their best baseball and having an 11-7 record, our number 4 team, the Arizona Diamondbacks, they're having some issues with their pitching staff a little bit. Brendan Pfaadt got paid, and then he's had good starts, not great starts yet. So, you want to see some more higher level consistency out of him. Corbin Burns is having some issues getting and staying effective. He's adjusting to a new catcher, to a new team, so I'll cut him some slack. He is one of the most consistently elite pitchers in the game, and he chose to be in Arizona. So, that should turn around. Another guy that should turn it around is Zach Gallen, who outside of the one great start with the Yankees has not looked good. He is approaching free agency, so it'll be interesting to see if that pressure is too much for him and he ends up losing some money, or if it helps him play better or pitch better, and then he's able to get more money. But their offense, they had the best offense in baseball last year, continuing to do things despite Ketel Marte going down. Josh Naylor's tearing it up. Corbin Carroll looks like one of the best all-around players in baseball, with really good speed, and he's showing some power so far this year, and he is not showing off his speed, which is he's always been a guy that more picks his spot and uses his speed on the base path, stealing bases, than just going crazy like an Elly De La Cruz has. So we'll see what happens. He is made to be more of a driving force right now with Ketel Marte out, but I think with Josh Naylor showing what he has been doing, and then some guys like Lourdes Gurriel is having a rough start to the season. Gabriel Moreno's been okay. Giraldomo Perdomo has had a great start to the season, so it's really nice to see that at shortstop. Eugenio Suarez hit those 5 homers in the first week, and then just kind of hasn't hit much since. So they still have some holes to fix. It's really all on their pitching, though, as they're scoring runs with the best of them. But moving on to number 3, the San Francisco Giants at 13-5. Now, this Giants team is so interesting. They have so much starting pitching talent. They have Kyle Harrison and Trenton Beck down in AAA. They have Hayden Birdsong in their bullpen. And then they're throwing Landon Raup out there, who's just striking guys out at a great pace despite not being able to work deep into games yet. But he was a reliever last year, so we'll see. He'll hopefully be able to develop that kind of saving your pitches type of deal so that he can work deeper into games. You have Jordan Hicks, who had a rough start against the Yankees but looked good otherwise. You have Logan Webb, who's a perennial all-star type player, and then Robbie Ray really looking good in his recovery from an injury-riddled season last year. And then, like I said in the Team of the Week stuff segment, Jung-Hoo Lee looks great in center field as an offensive driving force, and then everyone else just kind of falls in line. They kind of embrace the whole, we're not a team that's going to hit home runs, and that's okay type of mindset. So it's nice to see them winning, because of pitching, because of defense, and then especially with Willy Adames and Matt Chapman not having the greatest start to the seasons. Guys like Heliot Ramos and Mike Yastrzemski have picked up that slack. Tyler Fitzgerald getting a little hot at second base, which will be nice to see, as a lot of people didn't buy the breakout season that he had last year. So hopefully he can continue to put that together and just fully wrap this team around, and then look out to potentially see their first base top prospect, Bryce Ellinger, as he just went down with a wrist injury actually, but you could see him towards the end of the season, as Wilmer Flores has started off hot, but he's more of a DH at this point in his career, and Lamonte Wade Jr. is much more of a hits versus righties than hits versus lefties type of guy. So something to look forward to for Giants fans, with their offensive prospects. But really good start to the season for them. Really showing that they can keep pace with the rest of this division that is just a gauntlet so far this season. But going on to our number 2 team, the Los Angeles Dodgers, with a 13-6 record. They haven't been as dominant as was expected out of them, but I think some of their age is starting to show, as guys like Max Muncy just look like done and out of it. Freddie Freeman had an injury, slowed him down a little bit. He'd already lost some power. Probably continue to see that power start to go. Mookie Betts has been good at short. They kind of don't know what they're doing at second base. Andy Paz has been absolutely terrible in center field, both defensively and offensively. So we'll see if they end up choosing to call up like a James Outman from AAA to fill that spot, or if they just keep letting Tommy Edman do it and, roll out like a Kiki Hernandez and Chris Taylor at second base. But they could also pull up Kim that they signed from the Korean League last year. But Michael Conforto looking pretty good. Teoscar Hernandez having some big power home runs for them. And then Shohei Ohtani being Shohei Ohtani. I will say I question how he'll look when he starts pitching again, as I think that he is not as good of a hitter when he's also pitching and needing to work through all of that. But he is a great pitcher, so we'll see what happens there. I do think their rotation has been pretty good. It's nice to see Blake Snell already went down with injury, but Tyler Glasnow's been able to stay healthy. Dustin May's been able to stay healthy, which is a huge thing, as he has like 9 starts over the last 5 years. So that's good to see. They have Clayton Kershaw on the mend. They have Tony Gonsolin on the mend. So they have guys coming up that can, and I think Bobby Miller started today for them, or yesterday for them. So, they have a lot of talent just everywhere, and they'll continue to be at the top of these rankings, I would assume, all season. But our big number 1 team in the power rankings for this week is the San Diego Padres and their 15-4 record. They're the most complete team in baseball right now. They have their stars in Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr. They have their complementary pieces. Jackson Merrill's injured right now, but they have their other guys that are filling in very well. And their pitching staff is just so talented. Dylan Cease not having the best start to the season, but he's a top level pitcher. Nick Pavetta's got nasty stuff, who's proving that that contract was a good decision for them. Michael King is stepping up as a potential top 10 Cy Young finisher. He just had the first complete game of his career last week. So lots of talent in San Diego, and I do think they have the ability to beat the Dodgers. The Padres do in the playoffs potentially, and outrace them for the division this year. But that has been our power rankings, folks. We're going to move on to our last segment of the day, and that is looking ahead. So looking ahead to this weekend, we have the Diamondbacks and the Cubs playing in Chicago. As we just went over in the rankings, it's nice to see 2 of the top teams in the league right now face off. The Cubs continuing to get tested, as they just had the Dodgers and the Padres last week. Now that it's faced the Diamondbacks, it'll be nice to see what that pitching staff can do for the Cubs against that Diamondbacks offense. And then if their offense can hang against the Diamondbacks offense as well. But another series I'm looking forward to this weekend is the Twins at the Braves. Now I'm interested in this because it is 2 teams going the same direction, and that's down. There's 2 teams on the downswing where both of them could be like the Braves could sweep the Twins, and all of a sudden it looks a lot better in Atlanta. The Twins could sweep the Braves, and it would look a lot better in Minnesota. So, I think one of these teams are going to come out feeling a lot better about themselves, having beaten the other, even if it is a 2-1 type of scenario. So that's why I'm looking at that series. It's 2 teams that need a good series coming in and facing off against each other. But then my last weekend series I'm looking forward to is the Dodgers-Rangers matchup in Texas. It'll be nice to see the Texas Rangers face off against one of the top NL teams and see how they respond to that. I'm sure they would wish that their offense was healthy and their pitchers were healthy for this matchup. But, it's not a perfect world, so they'll have to make do and hopefully defend their home turf down there in Texas. But moving on to next week. During the weekdays, I have the Yanks and Guardians in a rematch of the ALCS last season. They play Monday to Wednesday next week in Cleveland. It'll be interesting to see those Guardians pitchers and that bullpen, how they come out against the Yankees, because the Yankees really did a number on their bullpen last year. So we'll see what happens there. And then another series is the Phillies-Mets series, which is huge, as this series it's very early in the season, but this is an important matchup between 2 of the top teams in that division where it could potentially be a scenario where only one team comes out of the NL East, which I think coming into this season was just a hard thing to look at and digest. But there's a lot of talent out there in the West. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see if the Mets pitching can continue to be good against good competition now, and if the Phillies can, put together complete games enough to stop the Mets. And then my last series I want to look at is the Padres-Tigers Monday to Wednesday next week. This is in Detroit. I really love the pitching matchups that are going to be in this game. I mean, being able to see those two top-end rotations face each other will be just a blast, and it'll be nice to see for the Tigers if they can hang with the top team in the league right now, as they got, I wouldn't say embarrassed, but they got swept pretty convincingly against the Dodgers to start the season. So potentially some, like rebound comeback type of cathartic feelings that could be had out there in Detroit if they're able to take care of the Padres when they come to town. But that has been our episode for this week, guys. Thank you so much. If you got this far, thank you. I appreciate it. If you want more sports content every single day, please follow the Ballhawk Sports Media channel. Give us a subscribe, and I will see you next week.